Hello and welcome to the Junkyard Love Podcast.
At what age do we learn how to have better conversations? At what age do we learn to have better conversations with ourselves?
Knowledge is power.
Reality is...
Sober October in review. Welcome, my friends, to the Junkyard Love Podcast. It is I, your host, your creator of the Junkyard Love Podcast, Jake Rhines. So today I wanted to make this episode to go over kind of my experience with Sober October. Not that it makes me super special just by doing it, just by completing it, but I feel like it's actually a lot farther out of reach for a lot of us than we realize. We're so caught up in our habits, me, myself, of course. We're caught in the same loops, and we don't seem to see the benefits of taking a break from our vices or taking a break from our urges, or really looking at why we should question our habits, our habitual default mode network moves that make our identity, right? So what I did for Sober October 2020 was I gave up. I did no social media of any sort. I did no alcohol. I did no weed. I did no masturbation, and I did no coffee, no caffeine. Those are all things that are not necessarily difficult for me to give up, but parts of who I am and parts of my habitual life, things that I enjoy, and then things that I just do just out of habit. I think a lot of you can relate with waking up and you kind of just feel a little until you get your cup of coffee, right? It's part of our character is being coffee consumers. Not everybody drinks coffee, but in our culture nowadays, it's an addictive, wonderful drug that we all partake in is coffee, caffeine. I've had issues with coffee before. Or caffeine before, rather. I used to drink a ton of energy drinks. And then my sleep schedule was all super crazy. I worked night shift for 5 years. And so my nocturnal, just sleepy weirdness was in full effect. So I would consume pre-workout, which has a ton of caffeine. I would consume 1 to 2 energy drinks a day or a night. And that was just what I did. I pretty much just went to the store without thinking about it. You just go to the gas station and you just get your energy drinks because you know that if you don't have them, you're going to hit a wall and you're going to feel just super sleepy and sad at work, and you don't want that. So I hadn't ever quit caffeine. I had lowered my caffeine intake severely, which helps greatly with anxiety. That's something that a lot of us overlook, I think, when it comes to anxiety and lack of sleep and sleeping thoroughly throughout the night. It seems so obvious and on the surface, right? Like we know that caffeine makes us feel amped, but we somehow, disconnect it from like, God, I slept so shitty last night. Well, if you had a cup of coffee or you had a Monster at 4 p.m., whatever it is, stuff lasts in your system for a while. I think it still has like pretty big effects 6 hours later is what it is. But regardless, so I wanted to give up caffeine for 30 days. I did that successfully. I did not go back, and I did have, I think, a total of 4 instances where I technically drank coffee, but it was decaf. 2 of the times it was actually just a black cup of coffee. We got some decaf downstairs, and I just did it just so I can like sit down and get some work done to try to trick my mind into that habitual, because I write and I work well, like having my morning cup of coffee. I'm extra creative in the morning and such. So I wanted to trick my mind into having that cup of joe. It was like I knew that it wasn't caffeine though, so it was just mildly unsatisfying. It was, I don't know, it didn't hit the spot, honestly, having the decaf cup. I think I might have even been better just saying completely no, like no, if it has any sort of caffeine, let's just not do it. 30 days, 31 days, whatever it was. And then I had 2 other times where I went to a place in town to get a protein shake, and I had them add part of the ingredients is coffee, but I just had them do decaf coffee. So I got 2 protein shakes that had decaf in them. When I came back onto the scene, November 1st, I woke up and it was a Sunday, and I was like, oh man, I can have a cup of coffee. I was so hyped. I drove to Red Leaf. I got a cup of coffee. I saw a friend who I haven't seen for a while, so that was nice seeing her through the drive-through. And I came back and I was drinking it, and I was working on some stuff, some audio work. And I was amped. I was jittery. I was like, I loved it, but after a couple of hours, I actually had noticed I was literally biting down on my jaw a little bit. Like I was tensed up in my jaw area, my face area, and my leg was twitching. It's interesting because it's this enjoyable high, right? We love that when you're just kind of carefree and you have it's energy, and there's almost motivation in that energy. We're all used to that coffee high. But I think I'm someone who's very aware of how I feel at all times. And so I really enjoyed studying myself when it comes to this. Like, okay, I had this first cup of coffee and I like it, but I'm pretty amped right now. Like, am I, is this a better feeling than equanimity? Is this a better feeling than the homeostasis that I had or seemingly had for the last 31 days? So it was interesting. And then it's been a couple days since that day. I've had a cup of coffee every day in the morning. I really enjoy my morning cup of coffee. My brain works the best. My brain seems to be most days the clearest upon rising. And so I like to, I also got my awesome roommates got me a Yeti coffee cup so I can go outside and do my meditations and yoga out in the cold and still not have a cold cup of coffee by the end of it. So that's wonderful. But I did notice last night, I had my cup of coffee in the morning, and then I kind of hit a brick wall at work last night at like 5 p.m. And I had a cup of coffee, and it was interesting because I enjoyed the cup of coffee, but I was very aware as I was drinking it, like, this probably isn't the best idea. It's probably better for me to power through this tired feeling that I'm having, go walk around at work, or go kind of just take a break from the computer screen that's making me tired. But what was easy was that instant fix, right? Like, you can go pour a cup of coffee, you get the smell, you get the whole thing, and within 20 minutes, when you're able to drink it when it's not too dang hot, you feel fine, you feel alert, you feel awake, you have energy, pep in your step. But it has adverse effects because at night, like, I had trouble falling asleep last night. I drank that cup of coffee way too late. I had 2 cups of coffee when I'm not really used to that much caffeine right now, so it got me pretty amped up. So there's something to be said for that. I think to round out the caffeine thing, I think that we could look at a lot of these, especially energy drinks, man. I used to be obsessed with energy drinks. I think they're delicious. I was never really a soda guy, but energy drinks, just all of them. I love to try all the new flavors. But we got to just keep an eye on ourselves. We got to keep an eye on, just being able to be okay without it. I think, not having, not only the caffeine headaches that you get when you don't have one, like, we also notice it's almost like that the word hangry. We hear that a lot. We get almost a kind of a slight headache, the caffeine withdrawal headache, and it makes us almost grumpy. And just like with hangry, it's kind of this thing where we're okay with being kind of a turd, or kind of being a jerk, or kind of being a brat, whatever it is. Like, we're grown adults, but we're not able to really connect the fact that we're hungry or we need caffeine, or we make it okay to be snappy, or like not our best versions of ourselves, because we have this craving that we really want. Like, well, I'll be happy. Don't talk to me before my first cup of coffee. I don't know. It's something interesting. I know a lot of people are in that bubble. I've certainly been a caffeine consumer. I mean, I started working when I was 15, and I just started hitting the energy drinks pretty hard back then. So taking the 30-day break, the 31-day break I'm glad I did it. I'm going to be a lot more aware of my caffeine intake. I've kind of just like let it rip the last couple of days, just see like what do I really feel like doing. But like I said last night, I had the instance where I said, shouldn't have drank that. I should have just powered through the little sleepiness that I felt, or maybe the food that I ate earlier was making me sleepy, so I can make better food choices, so I don't have to rely on coffee later. You know, your food is your energy source as well. Your water intake too. So when it comes to water intake is super important. I mean, everybody always says that, but it's this thing. You know, if you listen to this podcast, I'm always chiming in about it. I'm always going on about it. I have my friend Devin Sims on here talking about Kangen water, which I will totally butcher it, and I'll sound like a total dork trying to explain it. But the water is like more oxidized. It's more filtered. It's more electrically charged. It helps. It's broken down better, so it penetrates our cells a little bit better. And I think, you know, we all know plenty of people, you know, if you're, say, millennial age or younger listening to this podcast, I have a feeling, you know, your parents or your grandparents or even your older coworkers, it might be very normal for them to never, ever drink any water. I mean, I feel like I know hundreds of people who it's part of their personality. It's like a joke to not drink water. And those same people have like back pain, and they have issues with colon and in digestive issues, and you know, their knees hurt and their ankles hurt and their hips hurt, and they have, you know, again, bad back. I'm not saying that water is the cure to all these things, but you really need to think about what we are. You know, we're very liquidy beings. We're made of tons of water, and I'm telling you, slight headaches, don't just jump to ibuprofen. Like, how much water have you drank? You'll notice a lot of times when someone tells you to just drink water, or you're drinking extra water, you end up feeling a lot better, but it just kind of breezes over. Like you're just noticing that you don't feel the pain or discomfort anymore, the headache anymore. And so you just kind of go about your day. But when bad things happen, or illnesses feel like they're setting in, or we just feel kind of crappy. We really put a note in that. We're always like, oh, get that away. I don't want to feel bad. I just want to feel comfort. And being aware of that, I think, is important. And I think water helps a lot with that, because when you're not drinking enough water, you have all these little things that happen to your body throughout the day, and happen to your brain, and happen, you know, inflammation is a huge thing that I think water helps reduce. And we just get used to reaching for the instant fix, the ibuprofen. You know, I've been there. I've totally used to just take so much freaking ibuprofen. I would actually have, you know, everybody knows that drinking dehydrates you, and I would drink, you know, even if I had just 2 IPAs, I would go to bed. I would put 4 ibuprofen on my bedside table. So in the middle of the night or in the morning, I wake up, and as soon as I started to feel like maybe the slightest headache, I would just be like, oh, ibuprofen, pop those, drink some water, go back to sleep, and you wake up and you feel fine. But I think we should really be saving those, you know, ibuprofen's great. These inflammatory things, like it's all aspirin, it's all great stuff that we have, but we don't need to just be running to it every single time. I think that, you know, for me personally, I think that a lot of doing that like tore up my gut lining. I think that the effects that it had, the negative effects, though very hard to pinpoint exactly what they were, I think the negative effects just weren't really weighing out me being able to just deal with, like, hey, I have a slight headache, and once I get moving, once I drink some water, if I do 15 minutes of stretching and I go outside and I get some fresh air, maybe take my shoes off and get my feet on the ground, bare feet, do some breath work and stretching and moving around, like the slight hangover or the slight headache that I have, or the achiness or whatever it is, will likely go away. And I urge you guys to try that too. So if you're someone who just habitually pops ibuprofen and you don't drink water, you know, do your thing, but just, you know, be aware of it. Be aware, is this the best thing to help me long term? We're always looking to put a peg in, how do I feel the best right this second? How do I feel good now? And that's not always the best answer for our body on a spectrum, you know, our life on a holistic, long-term timeline, you know. And so water was great. I really enjoyed the Kangen water. I had a couple different things it was nice to just go over to my friend's house and converse with him for a little bit as I would fill up the water jugs, and he'd run me through the whole thing. I'm very picky about water, so I notice the taste, I feel like, a lot. So the Kangen water, I don't know. I won't talk too much about it because I really don't know a ton about it, but that's what I drank during the month of October, and it was great, and I enjoyed it, and I hit my gallon a day, and I think that everybody should try to shoot for that. I think every single time when you take a drink of water, don't make it just, oh, I'm going to wait till I'm thirsty to take a drink of water, or I'm going to force myself to drink water. It's like when you do take water, try to count certain gulps. Try to say, I'm going to try to drink for 5 seconds straight, or I'm going to take one more gulp than I normally would, just because you're trying to increase your intake. And then after a while, after a couple weeks, when you're kind of forcing yourself to get into that new habit of drinking water, always having a water bottle with you, always have water bottles in your car, whatever it is, just always having access to these things, and not going for the soda, not going for the energy drinks, not going for another cup of coffee, just quenching your thirst with water at all times. It starts to make it, you become more thirsty more often, but it's a good thing. You enjoy drinking water. Like, you want to get more water, and your body definitely thanks you for it. And I will say, I think there's something about waking up hydrated. Our body goes through a ton when we're sleeping. I think our body cycles through just a ton of our hydration. And I know me, like, if I would rather wake up in the middle of the night to have to go take a leak than wake up just completely dried out and feeling all crusty and dusty and rusty, So drink a ton of water. It's good for you. Have water right next to your bed every single night, and maybe try to make it a habit to, in the mornings, just wake up and drink water. It gets your digestive system going. Even before you have a cup of coffee, just try to chug half your glass of water. Good to go. And then stretch it out, get it rolling. So that's water. Water went well. I did, let's see, no drinking. That was a pretty easy one for me. I, situationally in my life right now, I'm going through a lot of, going through a breakup. It's like, I don't want to drown my sorrows. I've kind of aged out of that sort of feeling. I don't want to just go get blacked out drunk or anything. But I did notice, like, just the inevitable loneliness that I felt. And I didn't have social media either, so I felt very disconnected. I would kind of just like, I'd walk in and basically see just like my roommate, and he's working, he's got headphones in, and like, we wouldn't really interact. Like, there'd be multiple days where I just wouldn't really see anybody, and I felt very lonely. I felt very like I'd wanted to like text other people just to, like, I guess, talk about myself or see what they're up to, or I wanted to, the urge to drink came with, I wanted to hit up my friends and just say, like, hey, you want to go grab an IPA? Do you want to go grab a beer? Do you want to go meet at this place? And it's interesting because there was a lot of me that was feeling guilty about that. Like, oh man, I thought I kicked this urge to drink, because I've never been like a big alcoholic. I've never been a huge, heavy drinker. I don't really like to get like blacked out all the time. Certainly have, but my preference is just have a couple beers and a bullshit session. It kind of like helps me shut down my overly neurotic, overly aware, conscientious, just overly neurotic thoughts, and helps me, that social lubricant, right? I'm sure we all know how it is, where you just kind of feel awkward almost, or you feel self-conscious even, or whatever it is that alcohol helps us all with in social settings. I totally get that. I'm totally with you on that. But really just going through this sad time, I really just noticed my urge to not just get close to my friends, but I really wanted to just go have a couple beers. It'd feel better if I just had a couple beers. But I also am someone who, I deal with, I have major depressive disorder. And when I get carried away, like say I have beers 3 times a week, like, or whatever it is, or I go too overboard, or my diet's super crappy and then I have a couple beers. Sometimes it's all fun and games. It's all great. I'm having a great time. And then I go home, I'm at home, and my depression just starts really kicking my ass. I just can't really grab hold of it because, the couple drinks is enough to kind of, alcohol is a depressant. So it gets harder to grab control of the depression symptoms. And I'm sure anybody with anxiety, alcohol may affect you in the same way. So, alcohol, I'm glad that I did the break. Me personally, when it comes to my journey for drinking, I started drinking, I think I was 14. I grew up as a skateboarder with no structure. Like we were just kind of, I guess kind of like the rebellious type. Like, we weren't the first people to drink at our high school or our middle school or whatever it was, but we were definitely like the amount of people that got drunk with my group of friends for their first time was fairly high. There's this weird dichotomy, and I'm not saying I'm like proud of this or this is something that I aspire to put on my chest, but alcohol has just been immensely normal in my life. When I was way younger, my parents would have like multiple parties. My parents would go out pretty much every weekend. They had like a favorite bar in town that they would always go to. We'd always had a ton of bikers who were always drinking when I was a young kid. And so alcohol has just been incredibly normalized to me. And I think that a lot of people, especially in small towns like our town, it's just incredibly normal. It's just what you do. It doesn't have to be binge drinking. It could just be kind of like, it's just a little stress reliever. Like, yeah, I have a glass of wine, or I do this, blah, blah, blah. It's something that can certainly grab a hold of us, though, if we're not careful. Just noticing my urges when I quit this 30 days. I've quit in the last 2 years. I took a break. It started 30 days, and then it went to 45, and then it was just a few months, just because I was so. It was kind of when I first had my spiritual awakening, kind of rebirth, ego death. I started learning all this philosophy. I started learning all this self-help, started obsessively listening to guys like Tony Robbins, all these things. I basically was inserting meaning into my life. I just didn't think about the booze. I was just so obsessed with what I was doing here, like my work and my future work, and just learning about these things. They were just so enthralling to me that I didn't really think about booze. I wasn't really hanging out with anybody. But inevitably, your life, you can't just stay locked in your basement your whole life, it gets to the point where you almost, when you don't hang out with anybody, don't talk to anybody, there's almost like a slight agoraphobia that we step into, that is just this craving for social interaction, but you feel almost crippled by it. And so when you're overly neurotic and overly analytical about your thoughts and what you're saying in the room and everything that's happening in the room, and you have maybe you relate to someone as someone who has ADHD, where your attention span is very difficult to keep your attention span. Alcohol helps those things in social situations, especially like being at a bar, being at a concert where it's loud, there's a lot going on, there's lights, there's people walking over here, there's people walking over there, there's people walking in the door, maybe there's people looking at me, maybe there's not. Did I say that thing wrong? Did I say that thing right? Am I explaining this correctly? What does this person think about me? There's all these overly just ridiculous things that in social settings, especially nowadays, many of us go through. And I don't think that I'm alone when I say having a drink or 2 drinks or a shot or whatever it is, it's a very personal internal thing. We of course enjoy it. Like, it's like, oh, I like to have a couple drinks. I can let go. I don't really care what I'm doing. Maybe I'm more apt to kind of sing along to the song that's playing. Maybe that's what I need to get some karaoke in me. And in the end, I danced around, I sang around with my friends. That's worthy. Like, it pulled me out of my shell a little bit and out of my head. Right. It's interesting. Just because it's so normal. There are a lot of effects of alcohol that I think a lot of us have a lot of negative effects, or a lot of addictions towards alcohol that we aren't really able to admit to ourselves or able to look ourselves in the eye when it comes to, right? When we think of addicts or we think of an alcoholic, we're always like, anybody who drinks, we're like, oh, I'm not that. I'm so far from that. We have this image in our head of what an alcoholic is or what someone who drinks too much is. We might even have, if you're a drinker or even casually, just once in a while, you might have kind of an image or a friend, someone who you're like, oh, they drink too much or they whatever, blah, blah. Well, they probably have the same thing in their eyes. Like they probably aren't going to say, oh, I'm an alcoholic or, oh, I'm whatever this is. It's these labels stop us from really analyzing and taking ownership of what we're dealing with. Cause like, who fucking cares if someone else thinks you're an alcoholic? You're the one who's dealing with it. Like if you're, like obviously you don't want to be destructive and just ruining your life and hurting people around you, driving drunk, these sorts of things. But there's this internal avoidance of admittance of our own kind of like habits that don't make us feel good. What the ego does is we take credit for all the things that are good, but we reject all the things that are bad. Like we push those away and we don't want to see those because we're protecting ourselves from that pain in a sense. So I suppose the no drinking thing is it's helpful. I think it's still a slow journey for me. I'm very much looking forward to. I had my boss at work, who's an old friend. He took me out the night before my birthday. Like we got off work at like 9:30, something like that, and we went to one of my favorite bars. And just him and I sat there and shot the shit. We had one shot each and a beer, and it was nice, just to BS and just listen to the touch tunes. I grew up in those environments. I think a lot of people in small towns grew up in, bar or like sports bar or restaurant with drinks environments, and there's a comfort to that. So I think going forward, I'll just be more ultra aware of my drinking. I'm going to put my foot down with myself, I think, as far as, you get like one beer down or even two beers down and you're feeling great. And then you have this like, yeah, we'll do one more. Whatever it is. A lot of us have our own versions of that, but I think that maybe I'll just be more sturdy and be like, I feel pretty good right now. And I don't have to keep this feeling going. I don't have to, it's okay if this feeling only lasts for 15 more minutes and then I'm kind of like a little tired, or I don't have to be desperately trying to hold on to this light, wonderful, I'm drunk, I'm not thinking about whatever my bullshit or whatever my bad day was. We're always trying to snapshot, oh, I feel good right now. I want to maintain feeling good, or I want to feel even better. I think just kind of setting those limits for ourselves, it's important. I think also peer pressure is something that's worth addressing. When it comes to drinking, nobody likes drinking alone. It's something that I notice when I watch TV shows. People like drinking alone on TV shows. There's always like the person who's just always slamming a drink, or there's someone who's always, they're able to like manage their stress very quickly with a drink, which is probably some brainwashing technique that we fall for. But in real life, when a lot of times when we order a drink or we order another beer or we want to do a shot or whatever, then when the person that's with us doesn't want to do one, suddenly we don't want to do one, right? There's this strange barrier where we don't want to drink alone because then we feel shame for it. But I think that if we can kind of take a look and stop and really assess the awareness of, how do I feel right now? Like, do I want another drink? Cool. That's fine. Yeah, I do. Okay. And then if someone else doesn't want to drink with you, if they don't want to take another shot with you, that's completely their choice. I think we have a fun, peer pressure is a funny thing, because when it's your friends, we'll peer pressure each other and it all seems really fun in games. But I've observed quite a few people who really didn't want another shot, or they didn't want another drink, and the group, me included, I've been a part of this on the other side, like, come on, let's take another one, blah, 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 where we kind of just give in to that. And I think we can all kind of we can insert these boundaries where we don't let anybody persuade us, where it's like, I hit my drink limit and this is the last that I'm drinking tonight, or this is like, okay, yeah, I'll have another beer with you, but I'm going to have a cup of water in between. Or, yeah, I'll have another beer with you, but I'm going to set an alarm on my phone to where I'm not driving for another hour, or whatever it is. I think finding something that's just specific to you and your life, and how you grew up drinking, what you drink, where you drink, who you drink with. There's not all this perfectly directly right, like completely wrong, completely right, completely good, completely bad. We all have our own relationships with alcohol and our addictions and our pulls towards our habits and the things that we've been doing for a long time that we don't really question why we do them, or what we get out of them, or what we want to get out of them. So setting up rules for yourself, there's real power in that, really sticking to your guns. And if you have trouble with that, if you have trouble saying no, if you have trouble like, I'm not going to drink, and then you get to the party and someone hands you a Jello shot and you're like, fuck, fine, okay, one Jello shot, and then all of a sudden you're buying an 8-ball and you got a trip to Vegas, it happens. So just kidding. I think that taking like a 30-day Lent, or taking some sort of even 2 weeks, just something with intentionality, right? Something that says, I am choosing to do these things no matter what, and stick to that shit, man. We're so caught up. Our attention spans are so quick. Our attention spans are so this thing and this thing, that we end up just kind of giving into all of our urges at all times. We're always just, if something comes up, we're just like, cool, I'm going to do that because it's going to feel good right now. But feeling good right now doesn't always equate to your best self. It doesn't always equate to, in the end, being the person you want to be. Sometimes you'll let yourself down when you just listen to those urges. You've got to listen to your kind of higher consciousness versions of yourself, not just your lower, like, let's just get pleasure, those sort of things. So speaking of pleasure, I did no masturbation for 31 days. It was certainly a lot longer than that. I think it might have been more like 2 months. I've done no FAP, as it's called. There's a lot of research on it, honestly. You can go into a whole YouTube rabbit hole of the different effects of it. Like, a lot of different traditions and religions kind of have their say on these sorts of things. I'm not sure which of them I believe. I'm not sure which of them feels right. I'm not sure which of them resonates with me. But I know that for me personally, controlling those sexual urges, or controlling those urges to masturbate or think about people in that way, is incredibly helpful. And it actually helped me like really tame the beast in me. And I know it's so weird to talk about, right? And there's not really an area or a world or a comfortable place to listen to anything about masturbation, but it's a real thing. Like, I masturbate, you probably masturbate. And it's not something that we were ever taught. It's something that's an easy, low-hanging urge for us to all fall into. I've talked here about my opinions on porn. I used to watch porn, like a lot of us watch porn, but I just don't really. I don't know. I think that it changes our minds in intricate ways. I think that it's something that's so new. I heard this thing once that was nobody, as far as on the human timeline, like how long we've been alive up until the internet came around, or maybe just before the internet when we had like porno mags or whatever. The only types of people who would have access to like this many, like, quote unquote perfect physique women doing whatever we want in the craziest ways, as many as you want to see. Like, you're tricking your brain when you're watching these things. Like, your brain doesn't know the differences if you're actually doing it or not. Like, it is the only person who had access to those things before is people like Genghis Khan, like these terrible leaders who would just take whatever they want, like without consent. I'm sure there was like an orgiastic culture that raised pretty supreme for a long time, but I don't know, man. I just think that when you become really aware of your thoughts, when you become really aware of your urges, when you become really aware of what you're feeling and what your body's telling you and what your mind reacts to and how your mind convinces you of certain things so you can get certain things, you really start to notice how often you're thinking kind of head in the gutter, right? Like you're treating human beings as kind of just like how you can feel a sexual urge. And it's really interesting sitting with that. It's really, it almost feels nasty of you. It almost feels, it just starts to feel a little wrong after a while, with just giving in to every single urge that you have. I think that, but once you can kind of gain control, once you can kind of tap into it and tame that beast within you, you kind of grow up out of it. And, dude, listen, there's nothing wrong with masturbating. Like you're a human body. You're given the human body. You should explore the crap out of the thing. You should be just like how, you should be exploring your consciousness. You should be exploring your body. What feels good, what doesn't feel good. Explore it in whatever way you want. But this world of, pornography and Instagram having just like, the hashtag will be hashtag Pacific Northwest, and it'll just be like some girl's booty in a thong. And it's great, right? Like it's badass to see that, and it's really cool. And like we've quickly transformed our culture into just like this body positivity in a form of like, you can't shame me, I'm going to sell myself in whatever way. Like, but I think that when we're constantly seeing on our phones and we're scrolling and we're seeing like half naked women, or we're seeing all of our friends in their like most vulnerable spots, and we're like in an alone spot, so it makes you think differently about these things. I don't know how that fares for us in the long run as humanity. I follow on Reddit. I followed the subreddit that was porn free. And oh man, if you want to see an interesting side of the world you may not know that exists, there's thousands and thousands of people, primarily young men, I think, who are in this porn-free subreddit, who, they'll post like, hey, I've done NoFap now for 7 months, and I feel better than I ever have in my life, and I've got control of my life and all these things, and I don't masturbate to porn anymore, and I don't watch porn anymore, blah blah. I started when I was 11, or I started when I was 8, or I've been masturbating to porn since for the last 15 years, blah, blah. These people who have like all these erectile dysfunctions, they have problems with their relationships. They have just like very false ideas about how sex actually goes. I think that a lot of our urges being like really handed right to us on a platter and really just put in our faces, and us never stopping to take control of them, especially as men, I don't know, it changes us around. And I think that just kind of coming to terms with controlling those urges and putting some structure around things like masturbation, it's helpful. And I invite anybody. I know it sounds crazy, and I know it's a weird thing to talk about, and I'm not even sure if I'm talking about it properly, if there's such a thing as talking about masturbation properly, but I just want to, I guess, go over it, and say that, yeah, it exists, and my experience with it. No masturbation for the month of October, for Sober October. It went well. I technically, actually, 2 days before, on the 29th, I technically failed. I woke up to, this is rather embarrassing, but I woke up to some wet drawers. I had a wet dream situation. And it was interesting because I don't even remember some sort of fantasy. I don't remember any sort of like wonderful like goddess chick just coming into my dream world and blowing my mind, like it was, I actually woke up from a freaking night terror, which I suffer with quite a bit. And I woke up just covered in sweat, not feeling good, and I was just kind of panicked, and my heart rate was going really fast, and I had kind of swung out of bed, like woke up really quickly, and I got up and was going out of the bathroom. I was like, what the hell? And looked down, and lo and behold, something had happened. So it's interesting what our bodies and what our minds and what our psyche is always trying to get us to do. But I will note on that the shame that I felt. I was pissed. I was mad. I was upset. I was discouraged. I was like, great, I just failed my Sober October 2 days before and I failed it, which is an interesting thing because it took me, I went back to sleep, changed my clothes, whatnot, cleaned up, went back to sleep, and I woke up and realized like that I had been so mad. And I texted a friend and had told him, and I was like ashamed of myself. I was like so mad that I had failed my Sober October, but it was like my unconscious reality that did this. It was me in the dream world, not even choosing to think these things, of course. So it was an interesting aspect noting that I made myself feel guilt and shame for something that really was not in my control there. So that's another thing that I noticed, and that's something that if you do any sort of 30-day Lent, if you do any sort of specific guidelines, I will or I will not do these things for this set amount of time, or this is a value of mine that I no longer partake in the same way that I do. I don't bend on these things. Here's my moral structure. Here's my ethics. All these sort of things that we can install within ourselves with knowledge. It allows you to kind of observe what your mind does when you falter, or what your mind does when you have the urges, or like how you try to convince yourself that it's okay and then you feel bad about it the next day, or how you try to justify is a great word, like make our excuses for ourselves. But so me, to put a pin in that, I guess for me, it was just very, very nice to notice that I made myself feel so ashamed of that, and then once I woke up in the morning, I could say, oh, that's okay, man. Like, what you're wanting to do here is make yourself feel shame. But when I really analyze the situation, like, you didn't do anything wrong here. And shame is a helpful tool. Guilt is a helpful tool because it tells you, like, I don't want to be doing that thing again. But in this situation, I could kind of insert new thoughts into this thought process of like making myself feel bad for what happened when I was in a dream. That wasn't even a good dream. It was a terrifying dream. I don't even remember what it was. I just know that I woke up feeling terrible. And night terrors are kind of a normal thing for me. So watching that guilt and that shame, or watching, maybe you're an overeater, maybe you're a binge eater, which is something that I deal with sometimes as well. Like you'll eat just to feel better, just to feel that burst, and it feels good. And then 5 minutes later, you're almost out loud telling yourself how much you hate yourself. It just gets mean quick sometimes. So just observe when you do that. Is this helpful? How can I listen to this? How can I rephrase these words to myself? How can I not only avoid feeling this shame, this guilt, this whatever my mind is trying to tell me that I should or shouldn't do? How can I work with this, right? So really listening to those things, bringing awareness to those things, and asking what they're trying to teach you. So I'll go to weed. So I did no weed. So situationally, I had been smoking a lot, and before beginning the breakup process, Shayla and I had been together for 10 years, long time. We had a wonderful life we built together, and we came to this mutual decision that we had run our course, which is this isn't so much more, like I couldn't possibly even try to explain the depth of this incredibly difficult decision in a quick podcast sentence. And I don't want to dive too much into it. These are still wounds that are healing. They're not quite scars, so I don't know what my position is on them entirely yet. I would like to wait for me to be stronger and wait to have more scar tissue before I jump into those things. But nonetheless, I had been smoking quite a bit, and it was a nice thing. I'm very polite to myself when I smoke. I enjoy hanging out with myself. I enjoy learning more. I like to dance and sing around. I like to make beats, make music. I like to draw. I love writing after smoking. So it just makes me it allows me to be the creative person that I feel that I am, without the overly psychoanalytical, overly neurotic, unconfident version of myself kicking in. And It helps me with inflammation, which is a huge thing with freaking everything in our food. And I think so many people are inflamed. THC and CBD, these all help with inflammation a ton. It helps me stretch and breathe, which helps with inflammation. And it helps with sleep, which is a huge thing. So sleep for me, oh man, that was one of the most difficult. So when I gave up, I had still it was 31 days without smoking, but I had tried to slow my smoking and even stop it because I started dealing with when Shayla and I were going through the breakup, and I was just like, what the hell is my life? What's going on? Like, what am I going to do next? Like, this house that I'm in at this current second, like, it's not safe anymore. It's not my home anymore. Like, we're moving out of this house now. I started dealing with disassociation very hard. And weed does not hold hands well with disassociation. Sometimes it actually triggers it a lot more if you're somebody who's dealt with that. Disassociation is something, just as a light example, or a quick but not light example, for victims of rape. Oftentimes that's kind of what the mind does, is like, there's this acceptance period of, say, you're being a woman being pinned down by a strong man who she knows, I just can't get away from this. At some point, her brain, to protect her from this incredible pain, this incredible terror that she's going through, will just disassociate, which is kind of you disconnect from physical present 5 sense reality, and you kind of just float away. And it's this very blank, numb, empty, open but not comfortable, but it's hard to explain. But disassociation is something that I started dealing with actually a couple weeks before October. And so I had to like kind of quit on weed there because weed was activating it more. And so I was like, okay, I'm not respecting this plant medicine really as much as I should be. So I started taking a slow wean off that, a slow break, and I just started sleeping terribly instantly. Like I couldn't get to sleep. Combination of, not having the weed that I was used to, not having the relaxing thing at the end of the night like I was used to, but also just everything going on in my life. My mind was just racing. I was trying to figure out what's next, what's my future. Is this the right decision? What's going on here? These are things that anybody who's gone through through a breakup or a loss or a big life change, any of these, this whole life thing is holistic, right? These all have adverse effects on other things like sleep and food intake and urges and depression and anxiety and blah, blah, blah. So, weed helped me in a lot of ways, and it was really difficult for me to not smoke and not want that comfort and not want that, like, gosh, I wish I can kind of just shut off my brain and listen to some Alan Watts or Ram Dass right now and just, roll around on the ground and stretch because I smoked, and so I'm not overly thinking and overly analyzing my situation. But I didn't have access to that. So I had to tough it out. Sleep was really fucking terrible for the first couple weeks, to be honest. I'm not entirely sure that was just not having the nightly THC, or if it was, that in a combination of just trying to go through large changes in my life. Right. But I did get used to it. It started after the first, I say 2 weeks of not having all these things, of not having access to all of my vices. I was never really concerned that I would fall back on them. I've built up a pretty resilient strength that's like, if I set my mind to this thing, I'm going to do it. And it slowly builds on itself. It's this wonderful thing. But after the first, 2 weeks, maybe, I started to feel it was this, I didn't even give it a thought. It's like, yeah, of course I want that thing, but I've got 16 more days, or I've got 20 more days. Like, cool. And so after a while, once you really, really have accepted with yourself, I'm not going to do these things. It's not an option. Doesn't matter. There's no way I'm going to be tempted to do these things that I gave up, because I chose to set myself aside and set these things aside in my life for right now, so I can really enjoy them when they're coming back, when I can really, use them as a way to enjoy my life and not have them use me to try to squeeze enjoyment out of every second of life, because life is, it can't just be pleasure 24/7. I don't think anyway. Right. You got to be down to the real world. So, but it essentially after the first couple of weeks, it started allowing me to be excited. I started like, oh, okay, cool. 14 more days. Right on. I'm super pumped. Yeah. I can't wait I'm going to hit up so-and-so and we're going to go have a beer at this place, or like this coming weekend, my friends are taking me to Astoria to have a beer, and I'm just super excited about it. Beer and pizza. But it's something that we scheduled a few weeks ago, and I've been looking forward to it. But, something to keep in mind with things that you don't do all the time, they become that much more important. If you had beer and pizza every single day for a year, I feel like the latter half of that year, you're not going to be super pumped. It's not going to be this special thing. So, really noting these things, even just our big urge, you say you want to eat a piece of chocolate cake, but you only want it for a little while. You only want it for a small amount. You don't want it to last forever. It's all about balance. If you had the taste of chocolate cake in your mouth for 10 minutes after you were already full, after a while you'd be like, get this taste out of my mouth, right? You wouldn't want to feel the taste of chocolate cake afterwards. So when you can notice these as just feelings, notice them as just urges, and then you put these mental structures up of, I'm not going to indulge in that. Like I'm going to look forward to the next time that I can, but I already decided like, oh, I had beer twice this week. Well, as much as I want to go there's always something, there's always a party, there's always a friend who hits you up. There's always, anytime you go to a restaurant, like, yeah, you can add a beer to it. Yeah, you can add a margarita to it. Like, should we do a shot? All these things, that shit always comes up. So if it's affecting you in a negative way, or it gets a hold of you, or you don't make the right decisions, or you're spending too much money on it, or any of these things, set up those structures. Because when you make it to where like, oh, I only drink a couple times a month, or, oh, I only smoke a couple times a month, it makes it that much more exciting. You become that much more present when you do it. And it controls you a lot less, and you use these substances as a way to just kind of put some sprinkles on a situation that's already very enjoyable. Like, so you don't need these things, but they add a little bit to them, the social lubricant, or the self lubricant, as when it comes to marijuana. A lot of people, it's a huge thing. When I started healing, really tackling and understanding my depression a couple of years back, weed was a huge factor for me. It scared the shit out of me. Like, I didn't actually like it that much the first couple weeks, but I was like, I know this is helping. I'm having a couple glimpses of laughter. It's sending me into some panic attacks, but sometimes it's making me happy. I kept like powering through it. And then before long, I was able to just hang out with myself. And just being able to hang out with yourself, like not grabbing your phone to escape, not trying to connect with someone, not seeing what everybody else is doing, just sitting with yourself. Like, what do I want to do right now? And will I allow myself to actually do it? And will I just let myself have these things that I kind of feel like doing? It sounds weird for a grown man to say they, smoke weed so you can get by yourself and dance around, but there's some healing in that. So if you can get yourself to that stage, why not? There's self-love is far from corny. It's abnormal, but it's something that we need to really strive for and really find ways to get nowadays. So, let's see, what else? Yoga. I did yoga 20 minutes a day. I think that there was like 2 days where I didn't tally the exact times for yoga, but I actually have a pretty good solid meditation and yoga practice as well. So yoga every day wasn't that far of a stretch for me. But I think there was 2 days where I was incredibly depressed, and I know there was one time where I went outside. I was doing my morning routine, and I didn't make it 10 minutes. I was like listening to my motivational videos. I had all my workout gear on. I was doing my breath work. I was, trying to get a sweat, chugging water, like all these things. But I was just, sometimes my depression disorder, whatever, just really kicks my ass, and I can't really. I ended up literally, I don't know if I got 20 minutes, and maybe I stretched for 10 minutes or something, but I ended up like going back inside. I had to go back to bed. Like I went back to sleep, and I don't like doing that, and like I guess it's what I needed that day, but it was very defeating. I didn't like it at all. I'm usually someone who's able to, even if I'm having an incredibly bad depression day, I can even like go for a run, and like I'll cry when I'm running. I don't care, as long as I'm getting my body physically moving, because I know it fucking helps. But I had a day or two, just situationally with all the things going on in my life, just really activates that depressive side of my psyche. So overall, the yoga, the stretching, recommendations for that for other people if you want to take up that habit. So try stretching before bed instead of like when you have that urge to get a snack, like it's after 8 or it's after 7:30 or whatever, and like a lot of us get a snack, or we're watching TV or whatever it is. Maybe try to replace that with stretching. Like while you're watching TV, like you're kind of actively, I'm watching this so I can wind down. So it's kind of mindless. So I can, it's the end of my day. I'm pretty tired. I don't want to do much physical work. Like you don't have to put yoga pants on, and you don't have to like get a gym playlist, and you don't have to, set up all these elaborate things. Like you could just in your living room, put your couch back, or don't even get off the couch. Just start moving, just start stretching, just vibing. Like as you're watching your favorite show, just get moving, start breathing, like breathe into your tummy. I think before bed yoga helps our body out a lot. Add water to it, of course. And then in the morning as well, like right before bed and in the morning, I think those are the best times to get any sort of routines in. So stretching, yoga, meditation, water, all these sorts of things. I like to get up out of bed, and it's just the first thing that I do is I just start stretching. I get up and I lift my arms up real high, and I bend down, and I kind of just let my head hang there, and I try to get my spinal column moving. I try to get the spinal fluid going in there. There's a lot of moves on YouTube. Don't underestimate YouTube. If you just want to do, I think we treat yoga and stretching and movement as this workout. Like it's this thing where you work out and you sweat so you can burn this many calories. We just think calories, workout, gym gear, gyms, weights, like that's what we think about. And I think living in 2020, living in this intricate way for humans, like we've really advanced a lot we've changed the biological lifestyle that a human lives in is very different. Like working out, even like, doing curls, like intentionally lifting up heavy weights and setting them back down. 80 years ago, if you saw someone doing that, you'd be like, what in the hell are you doing? You look like so weird. But it's something that comes with our lifestyle now. We need movement. We're no longer, the thing right after monkeys that are swinging in the trees, and we're no longer hunting for days, and we're no longer, squatting while we're eating. We have this comfort, these perfect chairs, and these padded shoes, and there's so many things that biologically, in order to be comfortable, we've gone against what our bodies do, and so now we just need movement. And I think that I'm always saying, if counting calories works for you, if counting your steps on your Apple Watch works for you, if filling up your rings works for you, if all these things that get us to work out, if buying the new leggings every month and looking fly as fuck, going to the gym is your thing, like that's what gets you going, like dude, hell yeah, that's what gets you in there, like you're working out, that's great. But really don't underestimate just falling on the floor and stretching. It doesn't even have to be that long, or just looking up on YouTube, Yoga with Adrian. I always suggest yoga, beginner yoga. None of it's hard. None of it you do wrong. It's just feeling your own inners, your own body, getting these things going around. It's like, yeah, maybe you ate less calories, but your digestive system isn't working because your muscles are all tight, and the water in your body is not moving around, and things are inflamed. So they're stopping different things in your digestive system from working properly. So I encourage anybody to, eat healthy, drink your water, go to the gym, burn your calories, like kill it in the gym if that's your thing. But anything is better than nothing. So stretch before bed if you can, or right in the morning when you wake up, or just make it a habit through the day. Just as you're watching TV, like every hour or every half hour, every time it switches shows, maybe just get up and start kind of stretching your neck. Like you could still be watching the TV, start stretching your arms, start moving your legs. Like you don't have to follow an exact routine. You don't have to break a sweat. You don't have to go put on that freaking Nike headband. Just move. It's very important nowadays to what humans are is movement. So I think, did I go over social media? Social media use. Yeah, I know that I mentioned that I felt lonely without social media, and that was very true. Not having someone, being in a relationship for 10 years and not having the same person that you normally text just about everything, you're just like, it's just your best friend. You just talk to him all the time. You don't even think about it. You just pull your phone out and you talk to him. That's just something that happens nowadays. Humans haven't had phones in magical rectangles in our pockets our whole life, like instant access to whoever we want to see at all times, or whoever we want to talk to, or whatever we want to say to whoever we have in our lives to say it to. That's a pretty fucking new thing, like fairly new. So noticing, the comforts that we get from that, like how often I'd have quite a few friends kind of texting me, checking in on me, like, just wanting to make sure I'm doing good. And I'm so grateful for that. And I have some wonderful people in my life. But I really, what I noticed without social media again is that it gives me extreme comfort, when you're in an awkward position, or you're feeling lonely, or you're in a position where you think people are looking at you, or you're in a public place, or you're waiting somewhere, or you're on the toilet. Like before things even start going on down there, I feel like my phone's already in my hand. It's just a habitual thing. So just as when we walk outside to the car every day, we don't think about how put hand to handle, grip handle, pull with left arm, bend at left elbow, step to the right side so we can get out of the way for our door, get in car. Like we don't think about those things. They're just habitual. When you go outside to go to work, you just go get in your damn car and you drive. But there's a lot of small processes that happen in between there, and we can bring awareness to those things. So your phone, when you're sitting there and you're trying to be present, or you're watching something, or you're with people, or you're waiting, or you're walking to or from somewhere, or you just get in your car, you just get off a phone call, all these instances in our life where we don't really think about it. We don't bring awareness to ourselves. We don't bring awareness to the situation or what we're actually doing. But before you know it, you're just scrolling. You're just looking through your phone. And a lot of that is kind of our character identity, kind of avoiding discomfort, avoiding pain, avoiding boredom. Our inability to sit with ourselves is a problem. It's a problem. As someone I've been very addicted to social media before. And I still have it. Like I notice myself, like I check these things. I like being in contact with people. I like having cool conversations. I like seeing things that people are talking about. I like attention from it. I'm very, it's something that I had to come to terms with a couple of years back. I was like, holy shit, I am obsessed with other people's approval. I love other people's approval. I really want people to tell me what I'm doing is wonderful. I really want people to tell me what I'm doing is original, or even just the really low hanging stuff. Like, I want to be told that I'm good looking. I want to be told that I'm hot, all this shit that is so normal in the human brain because of our culture. But we let it control our actions a lot. And I don't know if that's what's best for our life in the long run. We're going to die one day. This life is life because there's death. this wonderful thing we have here. I don't think we should just fill it with trying to get as many dopamine hits as we can all the time. If you've watched the Social Dilemma on Netflix, I've recommended that multiple times. Tristan Harris is kind of one of the leaders of that, but it kind of explains to you it explains to us how we're manipulated and controlled, and we are the data being sold back to us. Our attention is a currency, and it's almost this unfair thing that's happened to us with social media. And I think bringing awareness to it, bringing it to our consciousness, like in front of us, like, wait, okay, I pulled up my phone and I was just scrolling, like, why did I do that? Not to make ourselves feel bad, not to feel ashamed, not to feel like we're weird and alone, but I think so many of us don't understand exactly what we're trying to get out of these things. Why is it that we spend so long editing our face, or getting rid of all of our blemishes, or taking 25 photos so we can pick the best one? There's a lot of this stuff that's super fun, like social media, and having cameras in our pockets at all times, taking snapshots of our life. Like, it's so cool. It really is one of the most incredible things, in filters and photo editing software at your fingertips. Like, I enjoy the crap out of this stuff. It's so cool. But what is it doing to my internal? Like, what is it doing to my confidence? What is it making me think about myself? I had a podcast guest, my friend Ricky Neveretti, who's a powerlifter, competitive powerlifter, and we're talking about ego lifting. And I used to always work out. I loved working out, but I feel like the last couple of years, before I kind of like stopped hitting like the weights so hard, and I started getting more into yoga and kind of staying at home, doing more running, I was doing a lot of ego lifting. I was essentially like, I didn't feel good about myself, so I went into the gym. I would drink pre-workout so I can get that pump. Pre-workout really makes you get like a pump in your muscles, especially the ones that are working. And by the time I left the gym, when I looked in the mirror, I was like excited, because I'm like, okay, I look tight now. I look strong. My muscles look big. I look pumped up. My posture is better. All this stuff. I felt confident when I left the gym. So I was basically trying to get like this ego pump, like just make myself feel good about myself. Not in a, I came to the gym and I did my work and I'm proud of myself for the work, but it was this affirmation towards myself for my physique. And, that's a part of our brains. It truly is. But I think that's also worth taking a look at. I think when we're putting our highlight reels out, when we're putting our best self out all the time, it's interesting what that does to us. It's interesting what that does inevitably to make us compare ourselves to other people. It's interesting how we think about other people who aren't up to that comparison in our eyes. It's interesting, like looking at photos of ourselves and saying, ugh, or we look at a photo and we instantly look for our flaws. Like I'll, instantly look like, oh, do I have any acne in that photo? Or like when I had more weight, one thing I would do when I would see like photo, like we take a group photo, when a photo is just like, hey, I'm having fun with my friends, let's get a snapshot to remember this shit. That's what a photo is inherently, right? But when you end up taking a bunch of photos and immediately everybody who looks at the photo, we all crowd around a phone to look at it, and we all just look for our flaws. Like, oh, I look kind of fat in that one. And then we kind of adjust our shirt, or, oh my God, my nose looks so big in that. Or, oh, that color doesn't look good on me. Or, oh, my skin tone next to my friend's skin tone looks shitty. Like, what is that doing to us? What is that doing to our personality and our character traits? And is that good? Is that healthy? Is that something that we would want for our children? Is that something we would want for younger kids to grow up and like really not comprehend that they're doing? I think when you can bring awareness to all these things, so quitting social media for a month, or taking the break from these apps for a month, turning off notifications. That's a huge one. I did that many years ago. And that's something that I still, when people have notifications on still, it actually catches me off guard. I'm like, oh shit, I forgot that not everybody, like people still use notifications. because it constantly pulls us out of our day. I think there's a balance. I think there is a way of enjoying it. But I think if you begin to notice how split our attention spans are, a lot of people identify with having ADHD now. And I think actually at this point, our relationships with our phones and social media and entertainment has actually created ADHD in a majority of our like young technological minds. Or what we would call ADHD, rather, what we identify as, and say our attention span, we can't focus or blah, blah, and it's just part of us now. We just brush it off like we don't think twice about it, but it's actually very important to be able to pay attention to things and be able to focus on things and be able to not just passively consume everything, but sometimes be able to focus and actively consume new information. But taking a break from social media, it's great. I definitely feel that next year, if I do Sober October again, I feel like I will certainly do that. It helps me. I'm back on social media now. I feel like I've the first couple days. It's funny because it was my birthday 2 days ago, and so I was back into it, but I was just like, let yourself just whenever you feel like pulling out your phone, like you're getting messages all day on these platforms, you getting texts, whatever, like let yourself pull it out and like just read that and really try to just feel what your friends are telling you and people and all these wonderful people wishing you happy birthday. I really tried to just like let myself rip, like, oh, my phone, my text message went off, so I had a notification, or like check Instagram or whatever it is, like every 10 minutes if I had the time, not every 10 minutes, but I let myself rip, so to say. And it was really enjoyable. And I think that's good for days like birthdays where you just like no limits, or maybe it's your day off. You're like, dude, I'm just going to like, just as where we would binge watch Netflix, like so maybe there's some days where you're like, it's Sunday. I'm going to fucking hang out on my phone today. I'm just going to enjoy the coolness of social media. I'm just going to enjoy whatever YouTube algorithms have for me to play next. I'm going to read a bunch of articles. I'm going to whatever. Notice that it will make you actually kind of weirdly exhausted if you did do that all day. But setting boundaries, maybe setting one day a week where you let yourself almost like a cheat day with your phone and you just allow yourself to lay in bed and do it. Or even just set limits around, I never allow myself to check the social media while I'm in bed. Maybe that's what's going to work for you. Maybe you try that for 30 days and you realize that it makes you care a lot less about the political nonsense going on. Maybe you don't allow notifications go directly to your screen. Maybe you don't touch your phone for the first hour of the day. You don't read any news for the first hour of the day. Our whole society has really been changed and formed and morphed by social media, and not just social media. Like what social media has done, we've got to look at what it does to what the human being is. Like if you're an alien who's hovering in a spaceship above the earth and you've been kind of watching humans for the last couple hundred years, and you realize like what's something that has changed everything that they do and how they interact with one another, what they think about. Like if you're in the alien ship and you're able to somehow see every human being's thoughts, whether it's about themselves or other people or about what they're doing, or how often they're not in the present moment because they're just thinking or arguing these things in their brain. I think that if you look at social media, it's very much changed this whole thing here. It's the human experience has been vastly morphed and flipped around and sped up and just gotten weirdo because of social media. Just what it has done to our culture, to our civilization. I mean, I guess you could even say what the internet has done now that we've had a couple years, quite a few years of the internet. I'm not even that long. The iPhone came out in 2007. That's just something to think about. I guess asking yourself when you pull out social media, when you're posting, when you're doing these things, like, why am I doing this? Like, why am I really doing this? And you don't have to tell other people. You don't have to go on a podcast and talk about your insecurities about it. You could just really ask yourself like, does this actually make me feel better? Or does this just kind of like Is this kind of just like what a smoker gets out of a cigarette? Like where, a lot of cigarette smokers, they don't like that they smoke. They insult themselves every time when they smoke. Not all of them, but a lot of times they're like, yeah, I know it sucks. I know it gives me cancer, but here I am. Like, are you doing that with social media? Are you doing that with your non-movement practices? Are you doing that with your water intake? Like, is it a popular thing for you to hate water, which, is that part of your identity? Covering up the things that are killing us, and just joking them off. I don't know. I've began kind of like trying to fight my urges and began trying to control them or try to work with them. Like I'm a human being and I have urges and I have addictions and I have habits and I have things that like, maybe I wish I had better control of, but I don't have to completely just bow down to them. I can take a grip. I can grab them by the horns and get a little bit stronger, little by little, by just trying, trying to change. I think that we grow up in this world, especially in the Western culture, and there's this weird thing that we don't realize is there that says, once you're done with high school, if you don't go to college, or after you're done with any sort of schooling, like that's who you are. This is who you are. You're done. You're just going to live that out instead of learning to change. Like you can really change everything about yourself. Like you could change, you could slowly become aware of your habits and then ask yourself, is this a habit that I want to take with me? Is this a habit that I want to go on for the next 60, 70 years of my life? Is this habit beneficial for me? Why did I get this habit? What does this habit bring me? Is it beneficial to me? Where did I learn that this is what I should be doing? Who in my life when I was younger did this thing around me that made it okay? How does this make me feel the next day, not only the night of, So I think just blues dreaming, just becoming aware of our habits, becoming aware of our addictions. Two more things. I'll round this up. I know this video is getting pretty long. But my running goal, my running goal was to run 5 times a week. And I think that I pretty much hit it. I don't know if I consistently did like, Monday through Friday, then I take Saturday, Sunday off. But there was times where I did run 7 days in a row, 8 days in a row, and then I would take like 2, sometimes 3 days off. Just trying to muster up. Sometimes I go too extreme, which is something that's good to know. One more thing I learned a little bit more about myself is sometimes there's too much that we put on ourselves. So I was able to get my running goals in. I'm feeling great. I've really enjoyed running. And it starts to populate like, what can I do with this running thing? I've always ran these. I've like these Spartan races, Warrior Dash, like all the 5K or 5 mile runs or the 8 mile runs, whatever it is. I really enjoy those, and I haven't done those in the last couple of years. I've kept active and kept running. I like outdoor running. I really love trail running, like going up on a hike somewhere and running through the trails there is fantastic. But when there's this gift you can give yourself when you stick to something. Like when you're like running every day, it starts becoming your identity. You're like, oh, I guess I am a runner now. And then if you're someone like me, like my head is always in the future and I'm visiting the now, right? So my head is always like, what can I do with this? Like, what do I want to do? Like, how can I one up this thing? And so I noticed I really started giving it to myself more as I was running more and more every day. I was like, man, I am a runner, and like, I can actually run a pretty good distance. And, I wouldn't mind running a barefoot marathon, or I wouldn't mind running a marathon in general. Like, I haven't done a marathon. I've done these other races, but I've never done a marathon. Or like, I wonder if I could run 100 miles in a week. Or, you start allowing yourself to set these like cool goals that if you completed them, they would feel really good. And then you allow yourself to start thinking about them through the day, like even when you're not running. So it's almost when you have discipline to do these things little by little, it starts opening up these things in your psyche to where you can kind of daydream and actually allow yourself to grab those daydreams and say like, oh shit, I can actually do that thing. It's this little trick to self-belief. Believing in yourself is one of the more powerful things. You can really accomplish a lot. You can really start allowing yourself to have times for these things in your mind to think about, like having time for yourself to write down certain things. Like I want to accomplish this within the next 5 years. And then when you start little by little actually doing steps towards it, you start really saying, man, I wonder if I can really do this thing. Anybody who's ever accomplished anything great, they had to believe in themselves. So don't allow the believe in yourself or love yourself or shoot for the stars, like all those sort of catchphrases and stuff. Don't allow those to be corny. Don't allow those to be like lame. Don't allow being happy and having self-belief to be something that's like for other people. Like that's something that the motivational, like weird self-love hippy dippy people do. Like, no, man, you're a human. You've got to allow yourself to have the thoughts of what you want your future to be, and you can start taking steps towards those goals. So the one thing that I did, of course, I waited till the end. Maybe I thought I was going to forget this one. One thing that I certainly say, I don't know if failed is the correct word. Maybe I'll dissect that, but I did not complete my writing goal. I had the first few days, I had a lot of good momentum. I sat down and I wrote a few pages. I wrote, it was probably only like 5 days, but then I started not getting it. I was just too tired for the rest of my morning routine. And I would come in and I would just be exhausted. I wouldn't have a lot of mental energy left. And I was dealing with some depression and this heartbreak situation that I'm trying to navigate through. So I'd just be overly exhausted from thinking too much about it. And I didn't complete my goals, and I had just moved into this new space. And so I wanted the writing goal because I was trying to create a habit of like, well, this is just what I do. Like the last step in my morning routine, when I come back into this room, I sit at this desk over here. That's not my regular desk. Like this is my like audio creation, like, music making, DJing desk. And then I have a whole other desk that I set up that has all my paperwork and all of my writing and all my poetry and all that stuff. So I was hoping to have the goal or have the habit built of every day I write something, like even if it's garbage, even if it's just positive affirmations, because that's all my brain has today, just get it done. But I did not complete that task. That is something that it was interesting. I had a couple days where I wrote a good amount outside of so the first 4 or 5 days, whatever it was, I did good. And then after that, I only had a couple days of really getting any sort of writing done. Other than that, it was something I ended up like neglecting. Like I stopped even like thinking about it. Like I almost allowed myself to accept the defeat. Like I guess I'm not doing that goal. So that's a bummer. I've been trying not to make myself feel too much shame about it. I know that I get too extreme sometimes, which that happens to a lot of us. So that's a goal that I want to not give up on, though, because I really enjoy writing. It makes me feel fulfilled. It makes me feel like my thoughts are getting out there. It makes me feel a little more sane. I know it's just beneficial in so many ways. Like there's all these different aspects of writing. I did continue to I'm just someone who has always taken notes in my phone. If I ever die and you want some good weird guy content, just go through my phone and look through my notes. And I have hundreds and hundreds of pages of just ideas and poetry and things that I want for my future and affirmations and all these things. So I was able to write on my phone a little bit. But anybody else who wants to partake in writing, if you want to make that a habit, just do it. Just try it. Try it for a week. Try it for 5 days. Try it for every Wednesday. You have an alarm that goes off at 7:35 a.m. and it says, write one paragraph or write one thing that you enjoyed doing, or even just a habit of writing your daily schedule. Like wake up and say, what do I want to accomplish today? Or wake up and say, what do I want to accomplish tomorrow? And so you're always a step ahead. So these are all important tools, important tactics. I'm certainly going to continue going forth with trying to get myself to write a little bit more and rebuild that habit here in the new house. My old place, I wrote a shitload, but it's something that I got to rebuild because I'm in a new environment, right? I'm in a new space. I'm in a new headspace. I'm in a new life, it feels like. So I've got to get those habits going. I'm going to work on that. I'm going to continue to drink as close to a gallon a day as possible. I'm not going to get light with myself on that. I've been doing a lot of yoga. I've been running a lot still. I think that doing this for 30 days really helped me just start to have my identity lean more into it. Like, this is just something that I do. And our personality is our personal reality, right? You know, we habitually do all of these things, and they become who we are. We aren't just who we are. We're born exactly this one person and we're just acting that out. No, like, you can set intention and you can set boundaries up for yourself, and you can really, it's almost like hacking evolution, right? Evolution is always going towards this one thing. Like, we for so long, it was our goal to just survive, like survival of the fittest, like make sure we're not getting killed by the lions. Make sure we have thumbs, and so we can make spears and we can hunt however many fish we need to. Just survive for so many years. And now we're kind of at this incredible place for humanity and in what we are, to where we don't just have to survive. I mean, more people die from obesity now than starving. Like, really think about that. But also, more people die from suicide now than ever. More people die from suicide than homicide. So I think we need to take a look at what we are and what we're doing and what we're thinking about, and how we get to those places like suicide, and how we get to places like defeat, and how we become something that just continues to go about our habits in our default mode network and never really changes and never really gets out of those divots in our brain. You know, neuroplasticity is real. You can create who you want to be little by little by just making incremental changes. So I guess I'll round it out. I think I covered everything. I'm looking forward to the next one, next Sober October. If anybody wants to participate, I know it's a long way away, but hit me up around the time. We could do a big group. I really appreciate everybody else who hopped on there with me in their own ways. I did what worked for me in my life. I've been drinking from a young age. I've been smoking for a long time. I've been, all these things that I basically, what I'm saying is I chose things that really seem specific to me, and I chose where I'm at with them. If this was like if this was 3 years ago, this would have been way too extreme. I think I would have failed like all the goals. But now I've slowly built up this resilience. I've slowly built up these habits, and I've slowly built up my strength and my ability to like have positive self-talk and work on myself and really believe like, I can stick to my guns here. Like, I got this. I made the decision that I'm not going to do this thing for 31 days. So it's not going to fucking happen for 31 days, and really sticking to it. So I invite you to pick a month, pick a friend that like really 100%, like it's not an option. We're not slipping up on this. No fucking matter what. Pick a friend, your spouse, your sister, your mom, even like whatever, whoever's in your life who you're like, hey, you want to try this thing where we just do this or don't do this for 30 days, for 1 month or 2 weeks even. Just stick to something and don't bend on it. It could literally be I'm not going to eat a dairy product for the month of December. I'm not going to have more than 1 glass of wine a night for the month of December. I'm not going to I'm not going to neglect my body for this. Try to get very specific with yourself, like something that is a yes or no, a pass or fail. Write it down, give into it. Like just do it. Just believe that you can do it and stick to it. I think there's real strength in these. At the end of my 31-day sober October, I felt great. Honestly, I felt powerful. I felt strong. I was actually very proud of myself. I felt my body felt really good. My trust in my own psyche felt really good. You know, when you deal with like major depressive disorder, and I used to kind of have like what we would call ADHD, OCD, just these like intense thoughts where I just get caught and obsessively start thinking about things in loops. It really helps me identify less with my faults. It helps me identify less with like the things that are like, well, these are the shitty things about my brain, and I guess I got to deal with them, and that's who I am forever. And it helps you really have faith that, oh, I could heal myself of all this stuff. I could get better in this way. I could make this part of myself better. I could actually accomplish that crazy task that I want to accomplish. So there's really something about it. I guess we'll end it. We'll round it up here. Discipline equals freedom. That's the thing that there's power in all of this stuff. When you're a slave to the things that you set up for yourself, it's a lot better than being a slave to your random urges, or just thinking like a boy all the time, or just being a brat all the time. There's nothing to be ashamed of if you don't have control of all of your habits and urges, but there is strength and real just badassness ahead of you if you can grab it by the horns. Yeah, I think that's it. I appreciate you guys listening to the podcast. If you had any questions about my Sober October, or you have any questions about anything that I mentioned today, I like to, I really try to value authenticity when it comes to this podcast. I really try to be open and transparent, and try to talk about things that people may be thinking but they don't know they're thinking. I'm just trying to expand who we are and expand what we are. And, I want to help people save themselves from themselves. I've suffered a lot of this crap myself. I've suffered my own mind in many ways for many years. And there is real freedom when you take discipline in, and when you start trying to insert your own morals and values and ethics, and just getting better and improving and evolving into the best versions of yourself. So self-actualization for all. I believe in you. Please, please, please stretch a little bit. Breathe from only your nose. Close your mouth. Try to be more conscious. Breathe slower. Stretch more. Drink more water again. And just love yourself, man. So I'll see you guys later. Hit me up if you have any questions. Add me on Instagram, Jacob from the internet. Send me a message on there. That's probably where I'm the most active. If you have any questions, this will probably be on YouTube as well. You can comment on there. If you have any ideas for the future of the Junkyard Love podcast, or guests that you think may be good, I'm open to the possibilities there. So we're getting up there in numbers, and I'm getting better and better at the podcast thing, I'd say. So I'm getting to where I'm more confident in allowing myself to get a little bit bigger guests, a little bit more known guests with a little more popularity. So lots of cool things to come in the month of November, a couple new guests, and some more following then. So take care of yourself, listeners. If you did enjoy the podcast, or you are enjoying the podcast, or you like these conversations, or you want to hear more, please like, comment, subscribe, put it on a thumb drive, and put it in your neighbor's mailbox, or send it to your dad. Just share it. I appreciate it. Take care. Knowledge is power.
Reality is